Hello, welcome to the April episode of Occupy Reports. We're so happy to have you tuned in. We're also extremely happy to have Phillip Price with us. He is a candidate for the District 11 representative to the Congress of the United States of America, and we certainly hope that he wins since he's here today. I have no personal opinion. With me today is also Joan. Joan and I are from Occupy Western North Carolina, and we're going to be asking some questions of Mr. Price. And are you ready to start?
Sure.
You ready, Joan?
Yes.
Okay, the first question is your intentions for Medicare for all, and my personal interest is the transition between the system that we have now, and I've heard you say Medicare for all is the goal. How are we going to get there?
Right. Well, of course, Bernie Sanders has some good ideas and has a good plan, but also the Conyers plan, which is House Resolution 676, seems to have some ideas that are easier to get through and that are going to address some issues that Bernie Sanders does not. And some of those things are Bernie's plan. Unlike Bernie's plan, this bill provides for long-term care, the 676. It also provides for prescription drugs without a copay. The transition of this bill would involve taking all of the money that's already allotted for Medicare and Medicaid and disability, and it would use all those funds to fund Medicare for all. So it would also require that all healthcare facilities become nonprofit, and it provides for funding to train the folks that are in the insurance industry now, to train them so that they would be able to move into being employed by Medicare for all, which is important because we cannot just, cut them off and leave them without a job. So I think those are some of the major things that are different with the House Resolution 676 from the Bernie Sanders plan. That's why I prefer this one.
That's really important, that we don't just take the insurance industry and drop kick it.
Right.
I mean,
I have
those are
friends that
people.
sell insurance,
Yeah, me too.
and they want to know what's the plan for them, and we can't hang them out to dry.
Sure.
But both plans call it Medicare for all, both Bernie Sanders plan and the Conyers plan?
Yes, they do. They do.
Oh, okay. So, but you have to know what's in each one.
Yes, and also the HR 676 outlines more of how it's going to get paid for, where the Sanders plan doesn't so much. And how is it going to be paid for? Well, it proposes a tax on the top 5% earners. It proposes a small tax on unearned income. It proposes a small tax on the trade of stocks and bonds. And, besides those taxes, we have just passed a ridiculous tax law and changed our tax code to benefit the top 5%, giving hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the billionaires and the large corporations. And we're just going to have to relook at that, and we're going to have to redo that because they didn't need that money. We were told it was a trickle-down system and we'd all see the benefits of it, but we all know where that's going. It's going to the third yacht and the fourth home in the Caribbean for some of these people. I believe that the people's money needs to be put to work for the people, the majority of the people, not the few at the very top. So with a restructuring of the tax bill, the tax laws, the money's there. Right now there's over $3 trillion in the healthcare industry. It's just in the wrong people's pockets. It just needs to be reallocated.
So the money is there.
It is.
It is. Okay. Speaking, go ahead.
Do they have each person in the United States, is there going to be a fee leveled at that person, each person, to help pay for this also? Is that?
Well, it would be
or
part
haven't they gotten to that point yet where they are?
The way I understand it, it would be part of your tax liability, your income tax liability, based on your income level, just as we pay income tax now. But compared to insurance premiums now, it would be much less, a much less cost. And something that, a single payer system, Medicare for all system, when we talk about that, people aren't thinking so much about the economic effect that it will have on our society in a whole. They think about, okay, we're going to have health care, we'll have a card. Basically, if you have a Social Security card, you'll have a health care card. And the idea would be that all of your medical records are on that card. So when you go to get health care, they know everything they need to know about you. There's not trying to find the records from some other doctor's office and all the administrative costs that there is involved in shuffling papers and getting records, health records. Now, that's one thing about Medicare for all, but what a lot of people aren't taking in consideration is how it will affect small business people like myself, small business owners. If you think about the cost of a small business person to be in business, one of those costs is workman's comp insurance. I have to buy a workman's comp policy to cover the people who help me, the people who work for me, whether they're subcontractors or whatever. For me to get on a job site, most contractors and homeowners are going to ask me if I have workman's comp and a liability policy.
Yep.
That workman's comp policy, a large portion of that premium is the healthcare part. If someone gets hurt, they are covered by that healthcare part. If we have a single payer system where everyone's covered and the federal government is making those payments to the doctors that are providing that care, then the workman's comp premium would be reduced considerably. So the cost of operating a small business would be reduced. And that affects hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And liability insurance, the same thing. Say somebody comes on my place of business or your place of business and they get hurt. They fall over something that's in the aisle or something falls on them. I'm paying a premium for a liability policy that's going to take care of that person having to be rushed off to the hospital and take care of their broken leg or their laceration or something. That would be eliminated from that cost of liability insurance. And then let's consider operating an automobile. Everyone in this country who owns and operates an automobile has to buy liability insurance to operate that automobile.
I never thought of that.
And part of that liability insurance is the health care part.
Exactly.
So operating an automobile will cost less because you won't have to pay that part of it.
I never thought of that. That's really great. I'm going to go to the next question if you don't mind.
Sure.
The student loan debt. I have a girlfriend. She's my age, in her middle 60s, and she is looking at retirement, and it's going to take her 15 more years to pay off her student debt. Now, she's in her middle 60s. She's going to have to teach at the school where she's working for another 15 years, and she's in her middle 60s, because she cannot do anything about her student loan debt. Now, I don't think that it's okay to just say, yeah, you can bankrupt because then everybody's going to game the system, they'll take a big loan and then they'll bankrupt it while they can.
Right.
I don't think that's a good idea either. So what do we do about this? It's a mess.
It is a mess. And you know, education should be a right also, like healthcare. I've said that education is the #1 equalizer. Healthcare and education are how we will fight poverty. That's the only way we're going to fight poverty in an effective way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the House Resolution 2366, it allows for student debt to be discharged in a bankruptcy, which is good, but it's, you know, it's a step forward, but it will also, it could make student loans harder to get. It could make the interest on student loans higher. And since I mentioned interest, we'll go back to this horrible tax law that's been passed. One aspect in this tax law is that they have removed the ability for folks with student loans to write off the interest on that student loan. Now they call this a Jobs Act, or the jobs, you know, this tax law, they've added that wording to it, that it's a jobs, like it's a jobs creator. That's the opposite of job creator. Why take away the ability for a student to write off the interest that they're paying on the education that they
Our
acquired?
student who's already graduated and is working
Who's
and is
been in the work
approaching
field for 30 or
retirement.
40 years.
Yeah, and they're still paying on their student loan.
No, so my plan is, let's go beyond that. I mean, we do have to address your friend and everybody who's already graduated and has taken on that debt. But from here forward, let's just eliminate tuition. Let's give tuition-free 2-year community college, 2-year technical school, which will lead, eventually we could go to a 4-year. If New York's already doing it. The state of New York has already started that program, and it produces, every dollar that we invest in public education, we have studied, pays the taxpayers back almost $7 per dollar. Because we educate people who otherwise would not get that education because they can't afford it.
That's a 700% return on your investment.
It is. And that is creating a revenue stream to our government, back to our government, because we're giving them the education to get out in the workforce and start making a good living with a good wage, and they're going to pay taxes on that wage, and it's going to be returned, and basically they're going to be paying it forward to the next generation behind them to get an education as well. So again, to this ridiculous tax law that was passed, giving billions of dollars to industries that have a huge surplus of cash. In this day and age, the top corporations in this country have more expendable cash than they've ever had, and we just gave them more instead of making an investment into this to a free tuition-free system of 2-year of education. And you know, instead of making us believe that it's going to trickle down to us someday like magical fairy dust, and we're you know, maybe we eat the crumbs under their table, just give it to us directly and inject it into the economy
and you know,
directly.
I don't feel like it's giving it to us. I feel
It's not,
like
it's an
stop
investment.
taking it from us.
Yes.
It's ours.
It's ours. Exactly.
Stop taking it away from us and let us have it.
Exactly.
So the next question is America's reliance on fossil fuels, and of course we know we need to transition to a clean energy economy, and I've heard you say some wonderful things about that, and I'm hoping you'll say them again.
Well, first of all, I own a recycling business, and my wife, Michelle, graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a environmental science and engineering degree. So we are both very concerned with our environment and protecting our environment. Our business recycles lumber. We defer hundreds, if not thousands of tons of material from our landfills every year here in western North Carolina and across the state.
Right.
And we've actually been given 3 grants by the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources that they give to recycling businesses to help us recycle more materials, which has helped us upfit our facility so that we can handle more material. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, Democratic representative from Hawaii, has a proposal that's called the OFF Act. And it proposes that the United States gets off of fossil fuel 100% by the year 2035. And I would certainly sign on to that plan. It proposes by 2028 that would be 80% off of fossil fuels. North Carolina is number 2 in solar production, second only to California. And we can build on that. Most of that solar production is east of here, east of the mountains, down in where it's flatter lands and big, vast, open areas. But we're starting to see solar fields here in western North Carolina. And, North Carolina has 35,000 permanent, good-paying jobs in renewable energies right now. So we can build on that. I would say that I have been endorsed by the Sustainable Politician Project because of our efforts with recycling and our stances, our policy stances on renewable energy. It's about carbon. Fossil fuels put carbon in the air. And that's what creates greenhouse gas, which is why we have global warming. That's not really arguable. Scientists have decided, 99% of scientists agree on that.
Oh, there are people who will argue that.
There are people who will argue that and say that we're just in a cycle of the earth or whatever, but...
and that fossil fuel is renewable. That it renews itself in the earth. I mean, yes, it takes millions of years, but it does renew.
Yep.
I'll give them that.
After we're long gone, it might renew itself. So how do we get the carbon out of the atmosphere and stop putting it back? We can stop putting it in the atmosphere by stop burning oil and coal and natural gas and fossil fuels, and anything that we burn is going to put carbon in the atmosphere. I propose that we put much more effort into manufacturing with hemp and other biological plants. Hemp especially because it grows so fast compared to a tree. A tree is going to take 20 years to grow to its maturity at least before we harvest it for any use, lumber or paper or fuel. Hemp grows its full cycle in 1 year. And hemp is like all other plants. The natural cycle of a plant is to take carbon out of the atmosphere as it's growing, but then when it dies and it decays, it returns the carbon back to the atmosphere. So it's carbon net zero. But if we grow hemp and manufacture things out of it, then we are encapsulating the carbon. We're pulling the carbon out of the atmosphere, encapsulating it in the hemp, in the cellulose and the fibers of the hemp plant, and we make things. And as Henry Ford proved in the 30s, you can make some incredible things out of hemp. He made a car out of hemp, where the entire outside of the car was made almost all out of hemp, and it was fueled with oil that was made out of hemp seeds.
Oil?
Hemp seed oil.
Like
it was
hemp-
fueled with
Hemp
biofuel, hemp seed oil.
Cool.
So there's a video, if you Google Henry Ford's hemp car,
Yeah.
you see them there. They hit the back of the car with a sledgehammer and it bounces off, and they say,
like plastic.
yeah, and they say that
better than
it's
plastic.
10 times stronger than steel, but weighs less. So you can make the things that everything that is plastic that we have now. It's made from oil. That cover over that switch plate, that plastic bag, and that garbage can right there, or that tote right there.
Yeah.
all made out of plastic. And it can be made out of hemp, the cellulose inside of hemp.
So that would stop the plastic garbage in the ocean that's choking up the whales and the turtles and everything.
Yes, for sure. And basically, it's a biodegradable plastic that we could make from hemp.
So that answers that question. I think we need to move on and let Joan have her three parts to her question. Thank you.
Don't make them too hard, John.
It's all about one item. It's about accepting donations from large corporations, including the We the People Amendment. That corporations do not have constitutional right and that money is not free speech. That's HJR 48. But if you're aware that North Carolina, We the People group, currently has bills in the North Carolina General Assembly in the Rules Committee of both houses, Senate 354 and House 453.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is a resolution to put it on the ballot for the people of North Carolina to sign on to vote to get money out of politics.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, it's sitting in the Rules Committee. And we have a petition online that can be signed. And when you go on to that site, you can also click on, and it goes right to all. With one click, it goes up to all the Rules Committee people, and encourages them to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
To get it out for a vote.
Right.
Now, so is this something that you're looking at and you're familiar with here in North Carolina?
I'm learning about it, about the North Carolina legislature. I'm more familiar with the federal House Resolution 3537, which was introduced, sponsored by a friend of mine, David Price, who's the congressman in the 4th District of North Carolina, no relation to me. And it's basically the We the People Act of 2017 is what that's called, that HR 3537. And it requires, it goes deeper into transparency. It requires the president and the vice president to produce their tax returns. It requires the president and the vice president to divest from their investments and set up blind trusts. It strengthens rules in truth and campaign ads, which we all know we need that, because people will just say anything and expect us to believe it, and many of us do.
Well, if you say it often enough, people believe it.
Yep. So, Citizens United was the worst decision possibly in the history of the United States democracy. It's basically allowing our government to be sold down the river. And it takes the power of us common folks away from deciding who we want to represent us, because it seems those on the extreme right prefer that we are governed by corporations and not by the people.
Not just the right. Large corporate donations are given to both
Oh yes, for sure.
Parties.
For sure.
and candidates are bought and paid for on both sides of the aisle.
Agreed.
So,
And go ahead.
so if we got money out, it would level the playing field.
It would, and money
a
is
lot
the
more.
root of so many of the other problems that we've talked about. The fossil fuels, the pharmaceutical industry with the healthcare, guns, the gun problem we have, the NRA, legalization of cannabis, whether it's medicinal or recreational, all those things are persuaded by huge amounts of dark money that we have no way to track, and there's no transparency in where the money's coming from. So I certainly agree that we've got to reverse Citizens United and go even farther than where we were before Citizens United was passed.
Yes, that's good.
Exactly.
I'm glad to hear that.
We've got about, what, 3 minutes? 5 minutes?
You got as much time as you want as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's over 2:30, so.
Okay.
So we have,
accountability of polling methods, including suspicion of election fraud. Now,
not voter fraud.
election fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you feel about that?
What's this? Give me a.
The question is
Specific
if you
question.
win or if you lose, mainly if you lose, and you suspect that it's because of election fraud, not voter fraud, but election fraud, would you fight it? Would you go to court, or would you at least speak up and let it be known?
I would certainly speak up, and if somebody presented me with evidence that was compelling enough for me to believe that that was going on, I would certainly fight that. Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Yes. And
I'm
yes.
sorry, I didn't mean to call
No,
out.
I'm not familiar as
Ranked
much
choice
with
voting.
ranked choice voting.
Yes, well, ranked choice voting is, I think it's a very good idea. And basically, just as a quick description of what it is say you have 3 candidates. One of the candidates you really don't like, just doesn't represent you in any way whatsoever. The other 2, you're kind of, waffling on. But one of them, you still are. For example, say you had a Republican, a Democrat, and the Green Party candidate. And right now, the people who are voting, people who might vote for the Green Party candidate, people will accuse them of just giving away a vote and giving a vote to perhaps the Republican. With rank choice voting, you give each one of those candidates a number, 1, 2, or 3. So if you like the Green Party person the best, you'd give them a 1. And if they didn't get elected, your second choice would be the Democrat. You give them a 2, and then the Republican would be a 3. So that instead of just the Democrat and the Green Party person splitting the other 60% of the vote, say the Republican got 40%, and the other 2, or 41 or 42%, and the other 2 candidates split the 38% that was left, that would result in the Republican winning with 42%. But with ranked choice voting, if you gave a 1, 2, and a 3, then say your Green Party person didn't win, but your second choice was the Democrat would still win over the Republican who
Because
got.
they would get your Green Party votes.
Yes, because they're going to get
Default to them.
Yeah, they wouldn't just disappear. They
Yeah.
would move to your second choice.
I see, and you wouldn't.
And so what it does is there's no runoff. There wouldn't be a cause for ever having a runoff.
That would
vote
save money.
also. It would save money and
Wow.
time, and it's a good
Speaking
idea.
of time, we're kind of out of it. Is there anything else that anybody
Would you
wanted
like
to say?
to?
Well, I'd just like
Put
to
it in
say,
the-
that it's been I've been on this campaign trail for 13 months now. I've never run for an office before. I just have been compelled to stand up for the people of Western North Carolina because I see us going down a bad road in the way things are. I don't think that our current representative, is representing us. I think that he's representing the interest of the dark money that feeds his campaign, like the Koch brothers and the pharmaceutical industry. And I aspire to represent the people of Western North Carolina. I've lived here for over 34 years. I've lived in 6 counties in this district. And I operate a business. My wife and I have been built a business from the ground up, our recycling business, for almost 20 years. And my business takes me throughout all 16 counties of this district. So I have roots. I have roots and connections across all of this district. And I love Western North Carolina.
That counts.
And
That counts.
It's very personal to me, and I'm just sick of the bullying that's happening in Washington, and I'm gonna stand up and do what I can to fight it.
Well, we're standing up with you and everybody who agrees with you. Okay, I guess that's it. This is Ann and Joan and Philip Price signing off, and we do appreciate that you've spent this half hour with us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.